Hello, everybody. Welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation, sales, and marketing success stories. I'm Jennifer Kirpus Romaine, Executive Director at the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association, which is a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals in the space. Today on the show, I have Matthew Berkshire, who is CEO at Flo Trans. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Jennifer, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
I'm happy to have you here. And I love getting to, like, we've known each other for a couple years, but these are always fun opportunities for me to get to know people better and share expertise, your knowledge, and all of that great fun stuff for our audience as well. So you've been at Flo Trans for more than 11 years and you're in that CEO seat now, but it looks like you actually came into the company more on the personnel side of things before kind of rising into that position. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey both at Flo Trans and in the industry?
Yeah. I did not get to Flo Trans or trucking in the traditional way. I had met our owner. We're owned by a gentleman named Charlie Johnson, CJ Johnson. He owns a few different entities in the ecosystem. And he had actually tried to recruit me when I was in undergrad. I was the we share a social fraternity, although we went to different schools. And I was on the national board and I was speaking. And I think I was a junior in undergrad at the time. And I don't think that I had met him before, but maybe we had met in passing. And I walked into the hotel bar after speaking, and he offered me a job in a very like crowded bar, which was both
Seems
very
pretty
very
on brand for CJ, but
fun, very like really threw me for a loop for like a week. Like I still like feel it as discussing it. And so I was in New England and I was doing graduate school, and I had changed my LinkedIn profile to like looking to get back into the market. I quickly realized I was in academia, and I realized I don't want to teach. I had worked through undergrad. I wanted to go back in the market. And within a few hours, I had an email, which turned into a phone call, which turned into a plane ticket in my email. I came out to Chicago, and he said, "Hey, I'll let you kind of design a job that you think works for you. I'll pay you within reason, but kind of what you want to do and how much you want to make kind of offer." And so I joined, I think, in 2000. For 2 years, we had an opening, and I became the executive vice president. Then we had another opening. I became the interim CEO for about 8 months, and I've been the full CEO ever since then. And so a lot of that is I can't claim credit for. It's Charlie having a vision, and Charlie being able to believe in people, which I think is the best thing that you can have in a relationship between coworkers is a belief.
yeah, I think that's really important. And also finding the ability to rise in the company that you're at too. I think a lot of times when we talk about recruitment, retention, and all those things, sometimes people leave just because they don't understand how they can stay. And so creating those internal opportunities are really important. So glad that you've been able to find success along the way at Flo Trans.
Yeah, I love how you phrase that people leave because they don't understand how they can stay. Uh, yeah, that's a great way to put it. And again, having belief in people that you work with, and having people that you work with have belief in you. And it's not always, necessarily a vertical move. Sometimes it's an internal move where this is how we can grow you. This is how we can give you new skills. This is how we can give you new responsibilities. Kind of having a pulse on what motivates people and what's keeping them excited, and what you can do to kind of up the ante there is something that I think we forget about sometimes. A lot of times we think it's just, well, this person needs a raise, they need an award, they need a promotion. And sometimes it's about, how can we give them the internal skills to go and find those things rather than just, seeing the promotion as the solution.
Hmm. Yeah, I like to say that I think one of the most important things is for people to understand their piece of the puzzle, and that I like stuck with that for a really long time. And then as I grew in my leadership journey, I also realized that they need to not just understand their piece of the puzzle, but also how it connects into the puzzle. Because sometimes we move so fast and things are changing and mergers and acquisitions happen and there's personnel changes and all of the chaos that we exist in. And so we would be like, okay, this is your job and this is what you're doing. And then you kind of like scamper away. But they're like, okay, but like, who am I supposed to work with, and where's the overlap, and who am I? Am I in charge of people? And like, we forget those elements. Or like, if you're developing new capabilities, what are they doing with them, or are they? And so that's something in my own leadership journey that I really process is like, it's not just explaining what their role is, but how does that fit in the overall landscape today, and where can they grow tomorrow? I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. For anybody watching that's not in transportation, business in itself is chaotic and can be crazy. Trucking and logistics is more chaotic and maybe more dynamic is the word I want to use
Hmm.
than any business I've ever seen, I've ever consulted on, I've ever been a part of. And it changes so rapidly, and that rapid change becomes the new normal very quickly. And so I think understanding our subjective context, this is what I do, this is my part, but that absolutely how that plays into the overall objective context of the business is key in helping people not only like understand, their place and where they're at, but where they could go and how important they are to the overall business. I think when people get how much they mean to the company, it's a game changer.
Hmm. For sure. And it is a very dynamic and a bit chaotic industry, and we are here rounding out Q3, rolling into the end of the year. I'm curious what you think is coming up for the holiday season, and then what we can start to expect in 2025.
It it's yeah, I
Just a really softball question to you,
sure,
for
yeah.
sure.
Uh, you know, I think crazy is an overused phrase. I'm just coming off using that to describe transportation, but the post-COVID market in freight has been really, really nuts. And what I consistently see is that I don't think anybody truly understands it. And every report that I read is like things are getting back to normal. Things are going to peak next month, next quarter, things are going up. And then the reports that I read a couple months later, well, it didn't happen in Q2, but Q3 is getting back. And so I think blessedly after these last 3 or 4 years, we are actually returning to a sense of normalcy, and the market trends this year have looked pretty close to 2019, and they're trending in ways that are much more predictable and easier to read, which keeps my blood pressure a little more in check than it's been. What I'm seeing right now is that the spot market's up a couple percentage points. Um, intermodal is up a little across the border to Canada is up, across the border to Mexico is relatively flat. Truckload rates are kind of staying flat, up a few like margins on a percentage point. Uh, and so I really think that kind of the market has recovered. What we don't talk about a lot is that during COVID, we made so many people dramatically overscaled because the economy boomed, the freight market boomed, and then you had government, an influx of government capital. And so all of a sudden the number of trucks went up, the number of chassis went up, the number of facilities and cross docks, it all really went through the roof. Whereas we were looking at like truck purchases going up about 2,000 nationwide for a year, for over a decade. And then when COVID hit, it went up like 5 times that in that first year. And so our demand or our capacity has really outstripped our demand. And I think now over this past year, we're returning to a point of equilibrium. I don't think it's going to be the huge boom that we'd all love to see, but I think predictably we're going to probably go up 5% over the next month, and it should be a good holiday season. And then we know we bottomed out in May, and it's been a kind of a continuous push back up the ladder. I think that's going to continue really nicely. We're in a weird time because we have some socio-political events. We have an election coming up.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stuff that can kind of affect the market. And so, whichever way our election goes, I probably see a 5 to 10% increase on the high end. But I'm at the point where I'm not staying up at night worrying, and so that's nice.
Mhm. For sure. And you just mentioned a whole lot of stuff that can impact the market, which I think is really important to think about. Like, yes, the increase in like equipment and things that happened over COVID. Also, we are in election year, so everyone's just kind of waiting to see what happened and what does that all look like. Are there any other activities or trends that you're seeing that's really affecting the market right now?
I think that where it's this year will look a little bit more like 2019 than the past 2 years have, because there was such a ramp up in getting stuff over and getting stuff built that, warehouses have been full for the last few years. And now for the first time in a few years, other than, stuff that's hyper seasonal, we're seeing pretty normal warehousing levels. There's space. We've had a lot of new stuff built, and so I think that warehousing will have an effect on the market, because now you will have people needing to bring in stuff over this next month to gear up and get stores and shelves stocked for the holiday season. I think I, like everybody else in the world right now, is watching the Fed pretty carefully as a predictor, and it seems like once a week I hear that, like, Janet Yellen could go live within minutes, and rates are coming down and people are gearing up, and we see that that's having an effect on not the transportation market but the stock market as a whole. And we know that when that does happen, that'll affect that market, which will in turn um, affect our market. And I think with good basic waterfall theory, we know that the biggest carriers in the industry are on the forefront of that wave, and they're already starting to see some positive returns. So I think those are the big things I think that are affecting like the external market. I think the internal market is very different based on region. One of the trends that I'm seeing internally at a lot of companies, not just freight but especially freight, is that there was a dramatic overscaling during COVID because you had all this influx of capital, and so you had all these CEOs that, all of a sudden, my 5 year plan was to get 3 more trucks at a smaller company. Well, I can get 5 trucks right now, or whatever. And so people really hit the scale button. And as the market's cooled, we've seen some people leave the market. And so that's
Mhm.
created issues at some companies. It's also created opportunities. If you were a company that was conservative during this and didn't really slam the accelerator to the floor, now there are lots of picks out there from everybody from sales, C-suite level, entry level brokers. There's a lot of people available that are skilled on the market right now.
Absolutely. I think one of the other bigger trends that I'm seeing that people are talking about is a push towards sustainability. And I know at Flo Trans, it's a part of its mission to partner with environmentally ethical companies. You've partnered with the Department of Transportation SmartWay program. You use paperless billing. You don't use any single use plastic within your office. And you have a completely new fleet that is at the head of the market in terms of gas mileage. I found this all on your website. It's all very informative. But I thought it was really cool because I think when we talk about sustainability, people might think about that in just one way. And so I really like that you guys are taking a holistic approach to that. And I'm curious, like, why is that a core competency at Flo Trans, and how did you kind of pick where to start and then keep growing?
Uh, I wish that I could come and say, hey, this is like my moral crusade, and that I'm a huge advocate for this. I think for us, it made a lot of sense business wise. We're located in Chicago. If you read the Forbes report, there's a report that comes out every year on kind of environmental efficacy. And Chicago, I was super surprised because I would think that it would be like California, Oregon, New Mexico, places like that would be leading the push. And Chicago ranks at the top for like green buildings, the number of people that believe that like businesses should have an environmental plan, the number of politicians that believe that environmental efficacy should be a core competency of businesses. And so we looked at it and we felt that, hey, this is really something that our city is pushing for. And then as the workforce is generationally shifting, one of the things that has become very very obvious is that probably with my generation and with the next generation, you have people that are not coming into the workforce thinking that, hey, I'm gonna come to this one company and I'm gonna stay here forever and I'm gonna move up and I'm gonna retire here someday. You have people that are like, hey, maybe I'll be here for a couple years, maybe I'll be here for a couple months. And you have people that are looking for a bigger reason to come into work than, oh, I made the company money, I made the owner money, I made the shareholders money. And when we thought about it, I felt like the greatest, well, what's a better cause than kind of saving the planet? Uh, I've always thought that trucking and transportation, I think it's the greatest business in the U.S. I think it's criminal that it's not talked about and that truck drivers aren't like talked about as heroes. But since the frontier economy, and even before that, even in the revolutionary economy, almost everything that people owned has been brought there, whether it's on a ship, a wagon. Over the last 100 years, it's really been on trucks, and that's never been more true than it is today. And Amazon's doing some crazy stuff in Chicago. You can get stuff delivered like by like a drone, like it's pretty cutting edge and pretty crazy. But when I first applied, one of the things that CJ Johnson said was that until they really until Star Trek gets in the picture and they can teleport stuff, somebody's going to have to bring that to you, whether it's a shirt, your meal, your pens, a desk, whatever. That all comes on trucks. Sometimes it comes several times on trucks. Sometimes the ingredients and the materials to make something are brought on one truck, other materials on another, that finished products coming on one truck. I mean, trucks are really the backbone of the economy. And in the U.S., with us being capitalists, the economy is the backbone of the entire country. And so I think that just trucking plays such a wonderful role. It's natural to believe that people are going to want a green link in their supply chain. It,
Mhm.
it's natural to see that in Chicago we have a lot of businesses, whether they're government, for profit, not for profit, private and public, that see themselves as having a duty to the world and a duty to the environment. And when I looked out on the landscape, I didn't see a lot of other carriers, a lot of other places providing options for people to move stuff uh, in a way that they'd be proud of. You know, a lot of people choose what they're purchasing based on, you know, how it's made. Is this made sustainably? Is it sustainable fabric? You know, seen huge movements, like stuff going from like regular fur to synthetic fur or goose down to synthetic down. People are very concerned, and they're showing that with their wallet about sustainability. So it made a lot of natural sense to us that people would see the supply chain and how something got from, you know, a forest to a factory to a manufacturer to a store, that people would look at that in the same way that they're looking at, you know, how is this sourced and all that other stuff. And so it's been good. We believe in it. We're able to educate our employees on it. Part of orientation is talking about, you know, that green factor and how we can kind of differentiate ourselves from the rest of the market. And it's been attractive to people. You know, we have, it's common in our interview process that somebody will say, well, you know, I thought I was going to get out of this industry, and then I saw that. Or, you know, I didn't think I'd ever come into this industry, but, you know, I'm seeing it not so much as I'm moving, you know, 3 pallets from here to Tucson. I'm seeing it as, you know, hey, I'm making the world a little bit better one shipment at a time. So it's been a nice thing for us to get into. And, you know, although I didn't start out as, you know, a huge believer, I'm a crusader for it now.
I think all that is really important. I like to think that if everybody did a little bit of something, like so much improvement can be made. And I also think you have to start small before you can grow big. So, like now, you guys have all of these different initiatives, but it's not like you on day one are able to push all of that out. And I also really liked when you're talking about the conversations during interviews, because that is a huge piece of what I'm seeing for the generations coming into the workplace, is that they do want to align with companies and work for companies that believe in something, and that it aligns to like their core values in a way that we may not have evaluated the same way. So I think that's incredibly important when we're thinking about stuff like that. And both we should do it, but also from a sales and marketing perspective, how are you publicizing that? Like, I intentionally read every piece of what was on your website because I was able to find that in 30 seconds. Because from a marketing standpoint, that's amazing because it's easy to find. You guys talk about it. You talk about that it's a core competency and why it's important to your business. So if I was, whether I was wanting to partner with you on a business standpoint or work for you, I can see what your values are, what you're actually doing. You're not just saying, hey, we care about sustainability here. We're listing out how we're doing that from our trucks to our office place. And so I just thought that was really powerful. And so I think those are things to think about too, that it's not just doing them, but also then how are you promoting them? How are you showing them so that people can learn about what you're doing?
That's nice of you to say. Thank you.
Of course. So I, of course, learned all about the sustainability stuff, but I was also looking at your LinkedIn to see about your history. And one of the things that really stood out to me about you yourself is that you're a pretty avid reader, and you're highlighting a ton of books on LinkedIn and what they meant to you as a reader, which is also really helpful for everybody else who's like super busy all the time. And you're like, no, thank you. I do need to learn that lesson. I will read that book that Matthew told me to. But if you had to pick one book this year that really left an impact on you, what would it be?
So I'll give you a really obvious one, which is almost always the book I say, uh, and then I'll give you a newer one. I think the obvious one is something that my mom had me read when I was graduating in high school, and for years I was like, this is the stupidest book I've ever read. This is like a creepy book. Like, I don't like this at all. And then I went to I think it was one of your guys' meetings, and the question came up of like, what's the best thing you've read? And one person started it off, and then the next person said, well, it's this book. And I kind of rolled my eyes. And then the next like 5 or 6 people said the same book. And so I went back and I read it. And, that was 4 or 5 years ago. And I've read that book once or twice again every single year since then. And that's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is. I really think that you could probably say that the rest of like business books that come out are kind of the footnotes to that, of just how to treat people and how to make people feel good and how to be genuinely interested uh, in people that are kind of, as times change, those skills are in some cases going by the wayside for the general masses. But I find that people that are really successful and people that kind of have magnetism that draw you in and make you want to be around them and want to work with you, uh, they really really have those skills and they're genuinely interested. Something that I read really recently that I was a little skeptical of because it's by a statistician who is also a competitive poker player and gambler, and it's called Edge. And it's an entire book written about when to take big risks and when to hold off on taking big risks. And as a consumer and a real devourer of like information, I find that often I am conservative and a little slow in my decision making. And so risk can sometimes be a really scary proposition for me. I want to get the business running to where it's doing good in and out. It might not be peaking all the time, but we're steady. And so taking those risks where there's a high reward, but also the potential of a high risk can be scary. And this book really changed the way of how I look for market indicators, but it also changed a lot of my feelings around taking risks. Have you read anything good recently?
Oh, so I'm not like I have, but I am currently in like a long stream of murder mystery audiobooks. Like, just I recently like re-downloaded the Libby app where you can like do all of the audiobooks from the library, and I'm just like knocking them out. And to the point where I'm like, I feel like I need to stop because my dreams are starting to get kind of weird because it's just like one murder after the other. So because I'll go in like shifts where I'm like, okay, I need to like not need to, but I like to read the business books, be really, really thoughtful. But then sometimes I just need a brain break. And so I go into these like deep dives and things of other things that have
I
no
love
value besides entertainment.
this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been into that lately. But I was actually thinking the other day, like I should probably toss in one of the other things. I know I started like the Atomic Habit book that everybody talks about too, because that's something like I'm really, really motivated on many things, but the things that I'm not, like, how do
Yeah.
I then push myself forward there? So that would be like probably my personal goal to get that one done because I've heard such great things about it. One of my favorites that I've read over the past couple of years is called A New Kind of Diversity, and it talks kind of about what we were talking about just like how different generations are different and what they care about. And one of the thing that stuck with me is thinking about kids coming out of college today may have never had another job before. Like all of the life skills that you learned. Like I worked at a donut shop for years in high school, and there is a lot of interesting characters that came in there. I learned how to deal with like different ethnicities, different and it was like 4 a.m. when I am not my best self, and just learning how to still have great customer support. I worked by myself or with other people. I also then had developed relationships with people who were older than me that weren't my parents or my teachers. Like, and if you think about all of that life experience that you got from those type of jobs, those, a lot of people don't have it. Their parents are like, you need to focus on school, this is what's important, and that's what they did. And so when they're coming into the workplace now, you may get super irritated that they're looking at TikTok when they shouldn't be, but that just literally may be like a, hey, this is inappropriate work behavior and let me explain to you why. Or like cognitive reasoning skills, because they didn't learn those on their feet earlier in life. You may have to like push them forward, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're lazy or won't do it. They just haven't had that exposure.
Yeah.
That was really powerful to me. And then the other one was that people coming in don't have an innate trust of leadership anymore. Like when we entered the workplace, it was like the president, the CEO, yes, sir, like you were the man, but they grew up in a time where every inappropriate leader was blasted across the news, and that's what they see. So for them, you have to earn their trust, whether you're their leader or not. And so, like, to me, those are the two. There was so much great information, but like that really, those two things really stuck with me.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I love the Charles Duhigg, the Atomic Habits, and he wrote something before that, much more dense and boring, but has some of the good sick points. A New Kind of Diversity is on my list.
Awesome. So we are edging pretty close to the TMSA Executive Summit. So before I let you go, I wanted to talk to you about it because it is a newer event for TMSA. We launched it back in 2022, but you've actually attended both 2022 and 2023, and we'll see you again next month. And so if people are like on the fence thinking about whether they should come or not, I would love to know your experience and what you found of value at that, and what are some of the things you learned, and why do you keep coming back?
Yeah, I am excited to get to advocate for this because I feel I owe a bit of debt to TMSA, and I'll be very honest that before I went to TMSA, I was not a firm believer in marketing. In business school, I gravitated very heavily to all the lean six stuff where everything can be quantified, and you're talking about down to like a millionth of a percentage, and down to seconds. And so for me it was always like very old manish, like hard work and numbers. These are, we believe in these things, and if you can't put those things to it, then it doesn't exist. And so I was always a little skeptical of marketing. I think I had intro to marketing under my belt, and I think that was the only marketing course that I took in business school, and maybe entrepreneurial marketing, which is like guerrilla marketing and stuff. And so I was very skeptical of where it fit in, and CJ Johnson thought this would be a good conference, and I really went prepared to be like, well, that doesn't make sense. I was ready to refute things, and oh my God, it changed how I thought about marketing. It changed how I employed marketing within my company. Now my marketing director is involved with sales. My marketing director is involved with recruitment, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of changing the way that it's changed a lot of things about how we recruit, how we onboard, how we train. It's been like a watershed moment where we've gotten a lot of great things from that. On the other side, what I have found with a lot of conferences in the industry are that it's either hyper specific. Hey, these are people that ship strawberries in California.
Mm-hmm.
It's super hyper specific, or it's really gigantic, like freight waves events, and those can be a little overwhelming. And
Mm-hmm.
what I found at TMSA is that it's the executive summit is a smaller group, and it's a more intimate setting, and the connections that I've made at TMSA events are wonderful. And it's a great place for me to go and meet other CEOs and then say, hey, can I run stuff by you? This is what I'm trying. What numbers are you seeing here? What are you using? Who are you using for this? How did you get that done? It's been great for that, but it's also just been really great for kind of my marketing re-education, I might say, and then looking at current trends of just what's happening in a field of marketing in general that I might not necessarily know a lot about. So
Mhm.
that would be my plug for it. It's my favorite conference that I go to every year.
Well, that means so much to us here at TMSA because it is something that we really care about. And I actually just had somebody ask me, like, how do you pick the content? I'm like, well, we have it in October on purpose because that's when people are thinking about what's coming next and the trends. And so, always happy to hear the value that it's providing. And so I appreciate that. Okay, one last question for you before I officially let you go and then see you in October 10th through 11th in Hoboken at the Executive Summit. But this is the question I ask everybody who comes on the show. If you could go back in time and advise a younger Matthew anything, and it could be personally or professionally, when would you go back to and what would you tell him?
Oh, that's a wow, what a question that is. uh I think business wise, I would go back to when I first came to Flo Trans, and I think the things that I would tell myself would be to keep a big open ear, go everywhere you can, listen to everyone that has something to say to you, but also focus on culture. Define your culture, define what's going to make you different, and then hire based on that, do your strategic plan based on that, make sure that everything aligns with that. I think that Flow Trans has been wonderful, and some of those lessons, they wouldn't be as important if you didn't learn them the hard way. But I think there are things that we could have done just massively more expediently if we didn't take years where we're well, we need this skill, and so it doesn't matter what this person's like, and it doesn't matter if they are really not a fit for our team, and well, we don't really understand what our team's like because we haven't tried to learn about them. We haven't tried to take a holistic approach to our people. And so yeah, I would tell myself focus on the culture, focus on the
Mm.
people, care about the people, and let that really be your guiding decision for everything that you do.
Awesome. I think that's really great advice. And I do think it's one that people take a while to learn. So hopefully people are listening that are maybe earlier in their careers and taking that to heart now. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show. I feel like we covered so many topics and so a lot of things to think about as we walk out. But I am excited to see you next month in Hoboken. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for what you guys do with TMSA. It's a game changer.
Thank you so much.